everyone, and welcome back to you and the TikTok of ProfBrainFever. I'm gonna pray that this file doesn't get corrupted, because my phone, not my phone, but my computer is doing that lately, where it acts like it's recording everything just fine, and then as soon as I go to process and save the video, just the raw video footage, it gets corrupted immediately. And I don't know why that was happening. It hasn't happened the past couple of times, and I'm gonna pray it doesn't happen this time. So if this is up with no issues, we're good. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and just go ahead and start. It looks like we're starting off with more whale and fat suits talk. I am debating about how much. It's like he just keeps adding to this, so I don't know how much I want to keep covering this topic. But at the same time, like I've said before, there's. Like, I keep finding things that I want to respond to, or things that I find ridiculous. And so I'm in this kind of weird space of I don't know whether to skip some of these TikToks or respond to them. So I'm going to be watching these in their entirety first to see if it's worth me responding to it. And if it is, we'll go ahead and respond. But, I'm going to try to cut down on how many of these I respond to. It just makes up so much of his fat acceptance content. So I guess we'll just see.
So The Whale got nominated for 3 Oscars, and for 2 of them, I really hope they don't win. I'm talking about Best Hair and Makeup for that atrocious fat suit, and Best Actor for Brendan Fraser. I love Brendan Fraser. I really, truly do. I think he deserves a Best Actor award. I think he deserves an acting award that covers his entire career, and he would deserve that. But he should not win Best Actor for The Whale. Ignoring the fact that wearing a fat suit makes acting harder, and actors who perform in fat suits give us worse performances than we would have if they didn't wear the fat suit or if they just hired an actor who didn't need one. Ignoring that, if Brendan Fraser wins an award for Best Actor while wearing a fat suit, all that does is tell Hollywood to continue to use fat suits. And that is bullshit. So The Whale got nominated for...
So they'll continue to use fat suits regardless. Just regardless. Because, I mean, The Whale from... I only ever saw previews, but it seemed like Brendan Fraser was playing a very, like, substantially super morbidly obese person. You're not gonna find, like, ProfBrainFever has mentioned that, you know, there's obese actors and stuff, and I'm sure there are obese actors. There are obese actors out there. I've never seen a super morbidly obese actor to the level of, like, my 600-pound life type of fat sort of actor. That's just, I've never seen that. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I don't think that they're as widespread or as prevalent as ProfBrainFever thinks that they are. Not only that, but to say that Brendan Fraser shouldn't get the Best Actor award for what's essentially a almost like quasi-political reason just feels like complete and utter bullshit. More bullshit than your offense at people using fat suits, that you think using fat suits is bullshit. More than that, to discredit someone's work because you don't like the prosthetic that they used in their role, completely negating their acting ability, what they did in the role. You didn't even see the movie. It just feels... I'm not even sure the word that I want to use here. I want to say cruel, I want to say unreasonable, but it's more than that, and I can't find the right word. It's just, I mean, ridiculous is also in there, but that still doesn't quite cover it. Just, I mean, I know we cover so much of him with fat suits. That's the majority of his content, is this crusade against fat suits. So let's just continue on.
So there's this old study from like 15 years ago that suggests that if you are friends with a fat person or fat people, you are more likely to become fat yourself. I discovered this thanks to More Than Tracy Turnblad. Go check her out. But if this is true, if this is science, do you know what that means? It means that every time you watch one of my videos, you get just a little bit fatter. All according to plan.
I know this is just a cheeky little TikTok, but I remember this study. I remember this study and I remember reading this study. And if memory serves, people are more likely to become fat or obese if they have fat or obese friends, because it limits the variety of activities. So if you have like an obese friend that is more sedentary, as a lot of obese people are, not all, of course, but a good portion of obese people are, you're less likely to do socializing activities that require a lot of physical exertion, and you're more likely to, for lack of a better phrasing, use food as a form of entertainment. So you guys might go out to eat more as a way to socialize, and that in turn build on your own habits even when you're not socializing, and that's what kind of creates that effect. That was my that's my recollection of the study. But this, even the one that he's referring to, this is just an ABC News article that I don't think is a full breakdown of the study, but he's not making a huge claim. It's just him being kind of goofy, so I'm not necessarily going to look it up right now. But that was my recollection of the study. I find it interesting. I don't know ProfBrainFever's person, because he doesn't cover it a whole lot. But a lot of the FAs claim, like, have this kind of warped view of set point theory. That, like, there's just this genetic encoding of what your weight set point is. There's a variation of set point theory that makes a little bit more sense to me, in that your body creates this weight range, and you can break free from it, but it's significantly harder because your body does have this tendency to want to hover in this certain area based on your like current weight. And there's a way to do it by losing at most 10% of your body weight and then maintaining for a little while, and then that kind of resets your body set point. That's another variation of the theory that I've heard. So it kind of depends on which ones that you. The vast majority of FAs that I've seen tend to subscribe to the genetic encoding idea of set point. And I don't know if ProfBrainFever subscribes to this or not, but the joke that he's making, I just find it interesting because they get so butthurt when you claim that, diet and exercise can change your weight. But then they'll do stuff kind of like, again, I understand that it was just a joke and him just being goofy, but I can't help but point out that they get really upset when you claim that they have control over their weight in terms of losing weight. But then they'll be in promotion of people gaining weight, I don't know his personal views on set point theory, though.
One of the many reasons that the movie The Whale is...
So the comment he's responding to says, I looked beyond him solely being fat and someone who tried to cope with his grief and shame with food.
Fatphobic, not including the fat suit, is because of this. It perpetuates the stereotype that being fat is a choice.
Well, there's my answer on the set point theory thing. So the thing is that I understand that last TikTok was a joke, but at the same time, it still feels like there's this level of inconsistency depending on if the person is trying to lose weight or gain weight and whether that's controllable or not. I don't know. Being fat is, I think saying being fat is a choice is a little over redundant not redundant, but, oh my god, the word is not coming to me, is a very limited view, I guess is the best way I can think to put it right now. In that, being fat is a series of choices that is made and is more while you can absolutely change whether you're fat or not, it is a lot harder than simply choosing or not choosing to be fat. It's a matter of lifestyle changes, it's a matter of habit changes, it's a matter of learning how to balance your work, life, and health in a way that facilitates a healthy body weight. That it's by no means unachievable. It is 100% achievable, but it's hard. It's hard. So the yes or the being fat is a choice is a choice, but it is also a little bit more complicated in that it's not just an on and off switch the way it's sometimes treated. It's more like a series of degrees and a series of choices and a series of lifestyle changes that have to be done. It's not you can suddenly decide to stop being fat one day and then the weight comes off immediately. It is a matter of efforts that have to be made and habits that have to be formed. And it's hard and it takes time and it takes longer than I think most people realize. And I would even say, much how progress and growth are not linear, I would say that weight loss isn't a linear journey either. I've had issues with my weight recently went back up 5 pounds, partially because I stress ate, and now I'm trying to relearn and reestablish what I was doing before. Only now I'm back at work, and now I'm trying to re-navigate that whole thing as well. So there's this fluctuation that is happening because I'm having to relearn how to undo past bad coping mechanisms, So it's not a linear journey, and it does take a lot of effort. But, well, let's see what the rest of what he has to say.
That every fat person is simply choosing to be fat. And if they don't fix it, it's because they're lazy, it's because they're a loser. This is what the movie says. Charlie, in the film, is fat because he chooses to be, because he is killed.
That's not even what the comment says, though. It's someone who tried to cope with his grief and shame with food. So I don't even know the name of the story, but even from the way that they are talking about it, it sounds to me like the story is about this person that had that is dealing with an excessive level of grief, probably through coping with food, and it ends up just continuing his spiral into failing health and his weight gain. Just because something positions being fat as a result of choices does not mean that it is condemning the person who made those choices. Even this thing of, if they don't lose weight, then they're just lazy or a loser. Most people that I know, most reasonable, non-asshole people, and I think even the majority of you that watch this, would not say that someone who is obese is strictly just lazy and a loser. I think most of us could agree that if you're getting to the point where you are massively overweight like that, there is probably a mental reason, like we've seen in a lot of My 600-Pound Life. A lot of what caused their weight gain and stuff was trauma, like serious trauma from early childhood. And I think that for people who are super morbidly obese, therapy kind of has to be part of their weight loss journey. Like 90% of the time, from what I've seen, there's a trauma that kind of started them down this road. And they need to address that trauma while working on diet and exercise. They need to learn healthier coping mechanisms. And that's another thing. I think learning healthier coping mechanisms instead of just eating would also be highly beneficial for a lot of people trying to lose weight, just in general. Like, I'm not talking about, like, 10, 15 vanity pounds. I'm talking, like, if you have 25 plus pounds to lose, it wouldn't hurt to kind of examine what are your stress responses, what are your coping mechanisms, and learning how to change those into something that is more productive or something that is more less harmful to yourself,
himself. And this is what fatphobic people think about every single fat person in the world. And it's disgusting.
Okay, real quick though, before we move on to the next one. I think the FAs would consider pretty much anyone who watches this video as fatphobic. Myself, they can consider fatphobic. I would not think of every fat person in the world is just fat because they're lazy. Even if you think that the majority of people are just fat because they're lazy and losers, I would hope that all of you would be able to listen to a story, some of again, with some of the ones that we've seen on My 600 Pound Life, where they've told us, where they've shared their story and something really horrific. I can remember a couple involving CSA where it was heartbreaking, and I would hope that people would have compassion for those people, have some consideration for what they're dealing with on top of their weight and all of that, you know?
This is just your reminder that J.K. Rowling is an anti-trans bigot, and just because you want to play a game with wizards in it is not a good enough reason to give her money. This is just
something where I'm gonna loop back around again and say J.K. Rowling, from what I understand, had very, very little influence in any of, like, she has the copyright rights to this series, to the brand name of Harry Potter, yes, but hundreds of people worked on that game to make a good experience, and I think to equate that with, like, you support J.K. Rowling's ideology is a bit of an extreme take, in my opinion. I'm big on separating the art from the artist. It's just something where J.K. Rowling had so little involvement, and even this mentions how, like, some of the comments mentioned how she doesn't receive much money. And I don't know, I think that Harry Potter, yes, she benefits from some of the royalties of the games and stuff, and the book sales and stuff. I don't know. I don't think that you have to boycott everything because of one person. Again, and feel free to disagree with me on this, but I don't know. I'm very big on separating the art from the artist. I think you can appreciate something in it. If you're like, I don't want her to receive a cent from me, then fine, I get it. You do you. I don't think you have to get mad at others for that, though. Like, I think it comes down to kind of a personal choice thing, and I don't necessarily think it says anything about the person that because they wanted to play a wizard game, you know?
Okay, J.K. Rowling is an anti-trans bigot and an...
Okay, so the comment he's responding to was that first one that we saw that says she makes less off the video game than she does with the theme parks. I have not seen a single video of you saying don't go to the theme park.
In addition to not buying her new video game, you also shouldn't spend money by going to her theme park. Or give her any money at all.
Honestly, if I were given the opportunity to go to the Harry Potter theme park, I would take it. I like Harry Potter. I like the narrative. It was a huge part of my childhood. There's a lot of nostalgia in it for me. I can acknowledge the issues, but here's the thing. I would still need to see what J.K. Rowling actually said, because one of the comments in either the last video or the video before kind of made me realize I never actually took a look into what J.K. Rowling actually said that got her labeled as anti-trans. And from what I understand, the anti-Semitic argument was based on the Gringotts goblins, as though that was just a representation of Jewish people somehow. I need to take a look at that one, because that one seemed super, like, over the top. Because goblins just, like, it doesn't have to be connected to any, even if they at one point represented a negative stereotype, it's changed a lot to where it's just kind of a different type of fantasy race now that's changed also over the course of a couple hundred years, from when it would have initially been used as a negative stereotype for Jewish people, to the point where it's changed so much. I don't know if you can even make the one-to-one comparison of what the not stereotype, but the caricature was before and what the goblins would represent now. I just didn't like it. Seemed like such an out there argument, but that's not the one that he's making right now. I need to see what J.K. Rowling actually said that got her labeled as anti-trans, because I'm just I need to know. I need to look into that.
This is a huge part of it. The amount overall.
So the comment says, to me, it's not that some people can't use food as a coping mechanism. It's that you don't have enough positive rep to counter that narrative.
In media, of representation of fat people is minuscule. And when we finally do get some sort of representation of a fat person, it's almost always shaded in this negative light. And amongst those representations, how often is there not even a fat person involved, whether it's the actor or the writer or the producer or anybody? So the fact that there's so little representation and what amount of representation that we have is negative and gross and disgusting means that there's nothing to counter it. If there were positive representations of fat people in media, maybe this would just go by and be like, yeah, sure, some people cope by eating and getting fat. But we don't live in that world.
I would actually say that there's a fair amount, especially now, over the past 10 years or so, there's been an increasing amount of like positive fat representation. You had dropped a diva. I think Ugly Betty was supposed to be pretty positive, wasn't it? You have that couple of different fat superheroes out there, and I would say from what I've seen, there's been an increasing amount of like varying body types, including bigger people. But the issue that I'm finding is that the FA's quality of what, like, quantifying what means fat and what the general public views as, I guess, fat, they wouldn't use the word fat, but like a bigger person, are different. And maybe that's what ProfBrainFever is getting at, is there aren't many like super morbidly obese people positively represented. And when they are represented at all, it tends to be something like The Whale, where there's this narrative of them using food as a coping mechanism. But to a certain extent, I think that that's very true. I've yet to see, well, no, that's not true. I've seen like one super morbidly obese person on the varying shows that I watch and stuff that did not have some sort of trauma or coping response with food that got to their super morbid obesity. There's only been a couple, though, that's the case for. The vast majority of people that I've seen that are super morbidly obese have something that they're using food as a coping mechanism for. Like, most people that I've seen that become super morbidly obese don't become super morbidly obese simply because they love food, you know?
Anti-fatness is the last socially acceptable form of discrimination. Have you ever said that? Have you ever heard anyone say that? I'm pretty confident that I have said that in the past, although I'm not sure if I've ever said it on TikTok. The thing is, it's wrong. So I just finished reading Aubrey Gordon's new book, You Just Need to Lose Weight, and 19 Other Myths About Fat People. She's one of the co-hosts of the Maintenance Phase podcast. Give it a listen. And the last chapter is about that statement, that anti-fatness is the last socially acceptable form of discrimination. And it sort of opened my eyes to this thing. The statement is not wrong because anti-fatness isn't socially acceptable, because it is socially acceptable. And the statement is not wrong because anti-fatness isn't discrimination, because it is discrimination. It's wrong because it is far from the last socially acceptable form of discrimination. And if you're part of a minority that is discriminated against, you already know this. racism, sexism, anti-trans bigotry, anti-LGBTQ plus bigotry. Those are all still, to varying degrees and in varying parts of the world, very socially acceptable.
Alright, I gotta give him credit here. I like that he is, I don't know if calling out is the right term, but at least, correcting and giving nuance to a statement that was made by another FA. I'm glad that he can acknowledge and it kind of reduces that victim mentality a little bit to acknowledge that no, being fat isn't the last form of socially acceptable discrimination or whatever. I gotta give it to him here. I'm glad that he can at least acknowledge that. As for the new Aubrey Gordon book, maybe I should do a reading of it. I'm curious now.
Saying that anti-fatness is the last socially acceptable form of discrimination only serves to minimize those other forms of discrimination.
I actually agree with this. I'm surprised and kind of happy to see this because it shows that ProfBrainFever at the very least can see, even if we disagree on whether, fat phobia is a thing or on what constitutes as fat phobia, I'm glad that he can acknowledge that, fat phobia is far from the only form of discrimination in the world. The way a lot of FAs kind of minimize some of those other or try to group fat acceptance in with those. He's at the very least acknowledging that there's other forms of discrimination that are still plenty prevalent. I'm glad that he can acknowledge that.
And minimize the experience of other people who experience that discrimination. Whatever the intent is, and I don't think the intent when somebody says that anti-fatness is the last socially acceptable form of discrimination, I never think the intent is necessarily to diminish all others. It's to try and point a spotlight on anti-fatness, which you should, but not to the detriment of all those other forms of discrimination out there. I don't talk about anti-fatness because it's, the last socially acceptable form of discrimination. I talk about it because I am uniquely qualified due to my life experience of being a lifelong fat person that I'm able to talk about it. Not because it's the last socially acceptable form of discrimination, not because it's the most egregious form of discrimination, but because my experiences allow me to talk about it, where other people who don't have my experiences can't. All that is just to say, don't say that anti-fatness is the last socially acceptable form of discrimination, because it's just not. And if you hear me saying it, correct me. Anti-fatness is...
I gotta give him credit here and I understand some of you are gonna think like this is an incredibly small win, but I'll take a win where I can get it. I gotta give him credit that he can see outside of himself. I gotta give him credit there.
Do you think people should be able to play other sexualities or disabilities they don't have? I have an opinion on this. My question is, why are you asking me? Is it because I have the opinion that fat roles should go to fat actors? Period. No more fat suits. That's my position as a fat person. Now, I'm straight and able-bodied. Nobody should give a shit what my opinion about whether or not...
Okay, so I think that he's genuinely misunderstanding the point of these questions. I don't think that he's playing dumb, and I'm not going to be one of those. It's like you're purposely misunderstanding, because I don't think he is. I think that there's generally I understand what he's saying here, and now I understand why he's not really addressing the questions, because he thinks that he's like, no one should care since I am straight and able-bodied. But the thing is that people aren't necessarily looking for you to give something that they would consider valid or give weight against. What they're looking for is your internal consistency with these issues. They want to know if you hold that same expectation across the board, or if you're simply a selfish, egotistical asshole that only cares so far and as to what represents you. It's one of those, if you're deep in like social justice, it's one of those fine lines to walk. So let's go ahead and hear the rest of what he has to say.
People should play other sexualities or play people with disabilities is. You want to know that answer? Talk to people who aren't straight or who aren't able-bodied, and they will give you their answer. I certainly have my opinion. You can guess what it is. It is very similar to my opinion about where fat roles should go and what we should do with fat suits. But again, I'm straight and able-bodied. Who gives a shit what I think?
So, I'm glad to hear that he has at least an internal consistency on that level. That's what people are looking for. They're not looking for your opinion to give it some sort of credence. They're not looking for your opinion as a way to give legitimacy or what have you to that opinion. They just want to know about your internal consistency and whether this is an ideological across the board sort of thought that you have or whether it is a self-serving thought. That is why they ask those questions. It's not because they're genuinely looking for your opinion on roles of sexuality or disabilities. As someone who is ace, personally, I think if it's a straight actor or a gay actor that can play an ace character well, I'm fine with it. My big issue with some ace roles is there's sometimes this kind of infantilization of asexual people. Happens less often. And granted, I don't see many ace roles. I don't really care. But if I see an ace role, the big thing that I don't want to see is this infantilization of ace characters, where it's like because they don't want to enter romantic relationships, and or they don't have any sort of like sexual drive, that makes them more childlike. That's the thing that, kind of pisses me off when I see it. And again, I don't see it very often. I think I've only seen a character like that once, and it irritated me. But for me personally, and I think this is why I have a fundamentally different opinion from ProfBrainFever, as someone, if I'm speaking strictly to ace roles, I think if the actor can play it well and do the character justice, I really don't give a fuck what their identity is. I care about how the character is played. I care about how the character is presented. Whether the actor shares an identity with the character, I really don't give a fuck.
So I am not an addict.
So the comment he's responding to says, it's a real thing. People can be food addicted just like they can be addicted to gambling, sex, etc. It's not about substance. Addiction is real.
Specialist. I am not a doctor. I am not an expert. But I will say there is a fundamental difference between an addiction to a substance like drugs or an activity like gambling and an addiction to a thing that your body needs to live. And if you're making a movie about food addiction and you have not spoken to any experts, and it's based off of a play by someone who was not fat, and nobody involved is anywhere close to the level of fatness of the main character you have centered in your story, you're not in your lane. Get out of it. Make some other film. So I am not an addiction specialist.
So, I'm going to go ahead and preface and say I'm not an addiction specialist either, although I have witnessed addiction in a number of different ways in my family, in extended family, I should say. And I will say that I agree that there is a difference between food addiction and virtually any other addiction, because most other addictions, you can quit it cold turkey and it not impact your life greatly, in that giving it up entirely would not necessarily have negative effects. But food is not that way. Food, you have to learn how to not eat excessively, but still eat enough to survive. So that makes food addiction harder to overcome, I would say. That being said, I don't think that negates someone writing a story about addiction, even if they haven't experienced it. If they're not the level of fatness of the character that the story was written about, that doesn't mean that they should get out of that storytelling lane. This is one of those things where it's like, if it's not for you, then it's not for you. Don't watch it. If you think that there's major issues with it, talk about it like you've done ad nauseum here. Totally get that. Totally fine. You're allowed to have your opinion. It's your TikTok channel. What the fuck ever. I think telling people not to write or produce stories that are not intrinsically involved with them in some way is fucking dumb. Again, I've said this before, and granted, this is a much smaller scale of me writing some gay man love man fan fiction when I was in college. I had fun with it. Others enjoyed it. It was fine. Like, there's been, and I read a lot of queer romance stories. I just like them. And there have been stories, written by queer people, queer romance stories written by queer people that I didn't care for. Just as there have been queer romances written by queer people that I liked, and queer romances written by non-queer people that I liked, and queer romances written by non-queer people that I didn't like. My general view of whether I like a queer romance story or not is whether it has the kill your gays trope in it. I hate that fucking trope. I'm not gonna get into my big, tangent on that, but I hate the ones where there's like this queer couple that comes together, there's like this traumatic event, and one of them ends up dying. I hate that method of storytelling. Does that mean that they are all that plot line is inherently bad? No. Does it mean that it is inherently problematic? Not necessarily. Does that mean that that non-queer people that write that tropey plotline should get out of their lane? No. Like, I don't know. It's a matter of, it's clearly you don't like it. You don't have to continue to consume that media. But that doesn't mean that the media shouldn't be made at all. It's a matter of, I don't know, it's just, they wanted to make it, so they did. That's kind of how I operate my life. I'm like, I wanted to, so I did. Barring major horrible things like unaliving somebody, like that, if it's inherently not directly violent against someone else, or does not cause direct harm, and I'm not talking feelings, I'm causing like physical harm against somebody, then just don't consume it. It's not, you don't like it, don't watch it. I miss that mode of consuming media. Don't like, don't watch. Don't like, don't read. Don't like, don't view. Like, I hate this. You don't share the identity, so get it, so stop making it, you terrible person. I hate it.
Far be it from me to make.
So the comment says, irrelevant. I want the best actor regardless of how the person looks in real life. That's what acting is all about.
Make assumptions or to think that somebody is lying. But almost every time, like clockwork, I make a video in which I say that fat roles should go to fat people, I'll get responses like this one. That, I don't care about body type, I just want the best actor. Do you? I don't think you do, because in your comment, you are assuming that the fat actor who gets a role to play a fat character somehow couldn't be the best actor for the role. When in fact, the best actor for any fat role will always be a fat actor.
Sorry, I gotta talk again about how I disagree with this. The truth is that Brendan Fraser is on the heavier side. He's just not the level of fat as in the character was in The Whale. That's why he wore a fat suit. So it's not like he wasn't already overweight to begin with and didn't understand some experiences of what it is to be overweight. I don't, like, just to take your thought process. So let's say that we have two actors presented for the role. And we're just going to, I know that there's plenty of actors that are interviewed, but just go with a thought experiment for me for a moment. Let's say we have a seasoned actor, someone who's acted in many roles of high caliber roles, high stakes roles, and then you have kind of an actor who had maybe one major role and then a bunch of like side roles. And the major role that they had was in a completely different genre of movie than the role that they are auditioning for. But the lesser experienced actor is the same weight as the character that would be played. Which person do you think would be more prepared and would be able to play that character better? The seasoned actor that has done a lot of serious roles like this, or the less experienced actor that has never had a major role of a movie of this genre but is morbidly obese? And I'm sure Prof. Brainfever would say, no, the morbidly obese actor would still be better. I disagree. I think experience means something. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like, well, the bigger actor needs more experience to be able to play those roles better. And I agree. It's unfortunately just one of those things. It sucks. It sucks. I know what it's even like being a teacher where it's like, they want more experience. I can't get more experience when I can't get a position.
All right, so let's break down this question.
So the comment says, so many people can't separate favorite from good or even like from well made. I have to agree with this.
This or put it in the comments. What is your favorite film of all time? And also, what film do you think is the best film you have ever seen? These two could be the same answer. They don't necessarily have to, and for me, they're definitely not the same answer. Because my favorite film of all time is Hot Fuzz. I could watch it and then watch it again and then watch it again. It is my desert island film. But the greatest film I've ever seen probably has to be Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. I could also rewatch this film, although it takes a lot more to watch Seven Samurai. It has an intermission, which I appreciate. It's on my list. It's on my list of favorite films, but it is not my favorite film, but it is clearly the best film I've ever seen.
So I think I'm not sure, because I don't know where this comment came from, but I feel like he's also kind of missing the point of a film can be well made and you can still have a problem with the actors. This is kind of coming back to The Whale. The film can be well made even if it's not to your personal taste, and even if you have issues with the actors, it can still be a well made movie. You know? But let's move on.
Are adults really watching anime? I'm sorry, are we?
We're not doing this. We're absolutely not doing this. I'm an elder millennial, and I know that my parents growing up thought being an adult meant being boring as fuck. To them, being an adult meant that you couldn't enjoy things anymore. Not anything that had even the remotest flavor of possibly being considered childish. They could not go near it. They could not touch it because they were taught grown-ups could not. But our generation better not be shaming people for enjoying things like anime. Enjoy what you like. Love what you like. You're an adult. You get to choose what the fuck that means. And if it means loving anime, Kamea fucking Meha.
I think he took that woman entirely too seriously. Like, as someone, and I want to comment on this because I think it goes to how Prof. Brainfever tends to take things entirely too seriously. As someone who also likes to watch anime, and I haven't watched it much lately, but I have been reading a lot of manhwa. Yes, I agree that, people can like what they like. And yeah, you have a problem with adults watching anime? Well, then don't fucking look. That's kind of how I feel about the woman. But, like, he went on a very serious rant over something that's overall very trivial. Like, you don't have to put the weight of strangers' opinions. You don't have to put that much weight on the opinions of strangers on the internet. You really don't. I comment on the FAs and stuff because I see the movement spreading and I have an issue with a lot of their rhetoric. But when it comes to, like, my personal views, there are people that hate what I love. And that's okay. I don't know why, but it just kind of reminds me of this incident that happened between two first graders. A couple of years ago, I was student teaching, and we were reading this book called Fact versus Opinion versus Robots. And it was the whole point of the book was to teach children that, one, the difference between fact and opinion, and two, that there is no right and wrong opinion. All opinions have to be respected. And so I always do a vote because it was part of a award nomination for children's books at the time, and all the kids in different school districts got to vote throughout the state of which book was the best. And so I was like, hey, who liked this book? Raise your hand. And there's this kid that tends to swing very extreme in emotions. He's either super happy or super angry or super sad. Like, he just has these very kind of extreme emotions. That's Kid A. Kid B is much more like level in his emotions, but he tends to be kind of a grumpy guy, and he just hated everything. That was just his personality. He wasn't a bad kid, he wasn't disrespectful, he just hated everything. He was kind of a grumpy boy. And Kid A hated that Kid B did not like the book. Even though we had just talked about respecting other people's opinions, he was like, why do you hate everything, Kid B? Why? Like, he was so mad. And this is one of those things where it's like, you like it, that's fine. Not everyone has to think that adults should like anime. Like, I don't know, this reminded me of that exchange between two 6-year-olds a little bit, in that, no, this is stupid. As an adult, you shouldn't watch anime. How dare you? You don't, adulthood doesn't have to be boring. If you like watching anime, then you watch it. Like, no, it doesn't have to be that serious, bruh. It does not have to be that serious. She thinks it's immature to watch anime. That's fine. I guess I'm immature then. Let me sit in my immaturity and watch my show. And if she continued on with that, then we can get into an argument over, because she's overstepping. But she's just expressing an opinion here. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. And you obviously don't agree with it, and you can comment on it, and that's fine. I just think that he took it entirely too seriously.
Fellow fat people, I have a question, and this is kind of personal, so feel free to not answer. But I am curious. Have you ever had a doctor ask you to lose weight for any reason other than the fact that you are fat? Not because of any test results, not because of any indications that losing weight would help your overall health. Just lose weight because the health issue is that you are fat. Because I looked back at my own medical history, and almost every doctor I've had in my entire life has asked me to lose weight, or asked if I considered losing weight. And there has never been any underlying medical reason for it other than the fact that aesthetically, I'm a big boy.
Okay, now that's not why doctors ask you to lose weight, because you are aesthetically a big boy. That's not why doctors ask you to lose weight. There's 3 primary types of medicine. I'm not a doctor. This is just my view of the medical field, and that's that there's primarily 3 types of medicine: preventative medicine, restorative medicine, and managerial medicine, I guess, is the best way I can frame that. These are not technical terms, but preventative will actually work backwards. Managerial medicine is for chronic conditions, so it's a way of managing health issues. Restorative measures are a way to rectify, cure, or otherwise resolve medical issues. These are things like antibiotics, surgeries to repair broken bones, that sort of thing. And then there is preventative medicine, which is where they find potential issues that could lead to bigger issues down the line, and they have you do things that would help alleviate that risk. Weight being one of them. Overconsumption of sugar could be another. There's varying types of preventative medicine, and part of preventative medicine is preventing health issues from occurring. Weight puts you at higher risk for certain issues. Therefore, the preventative medicine would be to prescribe you to lose weight. That is what preventative medicine is. But we're going to leave it there because this, I think I've been going on for about an hour now. And I'm just going to leave it there. But, like, this is one of those things where it's like, doctors don't, just a closing comment on this last TikTok, doctors don't care about you aesthetically. They don't care how pretty you look or how thin you are in terms of how good you look. There are risks associated with higher weight levels. That is why they have you lose weight, not because aesthetically you are big. But, so some quick things in life. I started, the school year has started again. I'm working at 2 different schools again. I'm still learning the second location. It functions very differently from the school that I've been at. And I'm still kind of navigating that. I'm also trying to navigate my schedule again because I went from having very chill, like not filled up days to having super filled up days. So it's a bit of an adjustment. It's that new school year adjustment where you have to relearn how to live as someone who's working every day. But someone had mentioned that they, and I'm so sorry. Oh, I meant to take a look at what your name was before I started this video, and it has left my mind. But at least one person was talking about how I haven't talked about what I'm reading lately, or the video games I'm playing. In terms of video games, if you're interested in what I'm playing for video games at all, I'm going to put the link to my other channel in the description of this video. It's Neophyte Outpost. I'm doing Let's Plays there, primarily of Otome games. We're doing a commenter's choice on Amnesia Memories, as well as a blind Let's Play for where I'm choosing everything on Hatoful Boyfriend. And that's pretty much what I'm playing right now. You can see my reactions to it there. But in terms of what I'm reading, so I'm reading all of these titles. And I'm just gonna, I hope you guys don't mind me going on just a moment about the different stuff that I'm reading. One is King of Bugs, because that was the King of Gaming Bugs, because that was a promotion. It's actually really not bad. It's about this programmer who is really underappreciated at his job, and then they get him and all of the people get sucked into the game that they were making. But because he was the only person working on bugs in the game, he knows all of them. He made several of them into Easter eggs just to try to keep up with all of the issues. And so he knows how to exploit the game in several ways that are beneficial to him and no one else does. And I'm only about 6 chapters in, but it's really fun. The Tyrant's Tutor is super meh. I don't even know if I want to get into the plot line because it's, like, I continue to read it because I started reading it and it's not terrible. But this guy is essentially born colorblind, which means that prophecy says he's going to lead his country to ruin. The author of the story is sucked into the world as this character, and we're still kind of unraveling deeper issues within the story itself. But there's this effort to kind of heal the tyrant and not to prevent him from becoming a tyrant and to make his life a little bit better. It's very meh in how it's told. I don't recommend it. If you go on TappyToon, you can read one new chapter every 24 hours, and I would recommend doing that if it sounds interesting to you at all. The art is okay. The storyline is just kind of, again, meh for me. So it's not terrible, but it's not great. Father, I Don't Want This Marriage is fabulous. There's so much going on in it. There's contractual relationships. There's a relationship where one of the parties doesn't realize the identity of the other. There is this awesome father-daughter dynamic going on. This former isolated person that didn't feel loved at all going back in time to redo her life like 5 years before, or like a year before, or something like that. I don't remember what her timeline is. And she ends up making friends that were enemies in her last go-around in this life. That's really good. I'm rereading The Reason Why Rayliana Ended Up at the Duke's Mansion because now I can read the official translation. This is a fabulous story, no matter what. It's funny, it's cute, I highly recommend it. But I've talked about this one before. Who Made Me a Princess, I've also talked about before. It is controversial for season 2 of the manhwa. I think it's a pretty good story. It's about this Korean orphan who dies in her early 20s, I think, is born as a princess whose father is a violent tyrant, and there's a whole thing going on with that, but she ends up winning his affection, and then shit goes downhill in the second season. For some people really hate it. I didn't mind it, but there's that. I Woke Up as the Ugly Duckling. This one has less, even though it looks like a very romance-heavy one, it's really not. My favorite thing in it is that the main character, there's a magic system in it, and the main character can summon, like, the king of fairy spirits, of wind spirits. And there's almost like this buddy cop element to it when they do that, and their dynamic is super fucking fun. It's a girl, again, not from of the world, that gets pulled into the world to avoid becoming a villainess, and she's becoming a hero instead. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed this so far. The art style, some of the men look really ugly just because of the art style. That's just my opinion. The art style does get better as you go on, but it's one that I would recommend starting with just the once every 24 hours and see if it's really your cup of tea before buying any of the chapters. Divorcing My Tyrant Husband is so much fun. I love Divorcing My Tyrant Husband. It's, again, a person that was from Korea that was sucked into the story of this world. Her character dies essentially from neglect and desperation. And by just telling her husband that she wants a divorce and stuff, he is, like, trying desperately to win her back, and she's like, nope, I know how this ends. I want a fucking divorce. And it's very cute. I love this. I love the dynamic. It's this not quite cat and mouse, but this tension that's going on between them, and her trying to get away and him trying to convince her to stay, because she's now presenting this completely different personality than she had before, and there were aspects of the character from the previous life that he didn't care for, but now that she has a completely different turned around personality, the kind of love rival in the whole thing is now scrambling to win his favor, and it's just this whole messiness, and I love it. The Lady I Served Became a Master is another one that I'm rereading. I didn't quite reach the end chapters when I read it the first time because the fan translation just became incomprehensible. But it's super fun if you like a very possessive male lead character, and the male lead character acts as a girl for like the first third of the story, and then can be revealed as actually male. And the female lead started out as the male lead's maid, thinking she was serving a young lady, and then doesn't really know what to do with herself when it's revealed, no, he's actually a man. And there's a lot of cute stuff that goes on with that, too. I think I've already talked about Your Majesty, Please Spare Me this time, but there's one other that I want to talk about. And this one, I'm engaged to an obsessive male lead. I was so fucking disappointed with this one. I bought more than half the chapters of this. I started as the once per 24 hours one, and I was like, oh, I'm loving this so much. Again, a girl from like Korea that gets sucked into a book that she was reading that was supposed to be a BL romance novel, and she's trying to survive because she's supposed to die before the events of the novel. Her character is supposed to die before the events of the novel, and so she approaches one of the male leads to for like a fake engagement, thinking that he's gay and that they can have a contractual agreement. He falls in love with her, and it's kind of follows that line, except there's three primary villains. There's like the big main villain, a side villain that still can fuck up her life, and then some really minor villains. And the big bad main villain, spoiler alert here, but trust me, I'm saving you. There's this big battle with another character that happens off screen. We never see him again. When he's referenced again, it's like pretty sure he's probably dead. Really, you're pretty sure he's probably dead. He wanted to kill the main character. He was a time traveler. He ended up coming in from a different, within the same timeline, within the same universe, and just ended up going back in time, which is different from her. That was never rectified. She has a sister that was very much a spoiled princess, and it's like, I deserve to be loved. She was meant to be the main female character, was supposed to be the one that people just shit on, and I was supposed to be loved, and so she tries to concoct this whole thing to make sure she gets that. But then in the end, we see her in a less than ideal life, but she never really gets any comeuppance for it. And the third, like, very minor villains are dealt with, and it's fine, but I would much rather have them not been dealt with. And this guy here, who is our big main villain, I would have much rather seen something rectified with that. Also, she has like this terminal disease, this unusual terminal disease for the world. At least it's kind of hinted at being terminal, but yet she doesn't actually die from it, and it seems like it could possibly be managed, but we're not sure. That's never really fully addressed. There are so many hanging plot threads at the end of this thing. I was so fucking pissed. It's like, but they end up together. The two leads end up together. Oh, how sweet. Like, great. Fine. They get married. Great. Was she cured? Because it's kind of ignored at the end. What happened to the guy that wanted to kill everyone? I want to know, is he actually dead? Because the guy that found him just kind of pops back in completely unharmed. Like, they didn't actually have I don't even care if they're fighting. Like, it was presented like they were, the guy that came back, the guy that, on the good side that fought him, was probably stronger, but only by a margin, and should not have come back completely unscathed. So, we don't fucking know what happened with that confrontation. I'm still so mad about it. We don't know what happened with that confrontation. We don't know what happened with that character. The bitchy sister is just continuing to kind of be a princess, and her life seems a little less than ideal now, but nothing was ever exposed for what she did. I'm so mad at this series. I don't recommend it. It pissed me off so much because the ending is so unsatisfying. The last third goes at a lightning fast pace, and I kept waiting for stuff to be resolved. I kept looking. I'm like, oh, and when we got to the final chapter, I'm like, is it just on hiatus? Is it, because it's not labeled as complete. And so I'm like, is it just on hiatus? I think they just haven't removed the update thing, because it hasn't been updated in almost a year. So, and it's not, usually they label it, it's like, it's on hiatus for now. The hiatus should end soon if they don't have like an actual end date, but that's not up there. And it's even labeled, the final chapter is labeled the finale. So, like, that just seems like what the entirety of the story. I'm still so mad about it. I'm so mad that I spent like $15 to read the 80 chapters of this series for that ending. I could have spent $15 on a different series. I was so mad. But anyway, I think I've done enough ranting. Thank you if you listened to that whole thing. Check out my other channel if you are interested at all in the games that I play. And we are at March of the year in the TikTok of ProfBrainFever. And I don't know how many more parts it's probably going to take, but we'll just keep chugging along until we finish. And as for some crafts that I've been doing, I'm still working on my macrame rug, and I'm trying this kind of almost gold leafing technique to create a bin to put the mail in, because someone keeps bringing the mail in my house and I'm not getting important documents that I need. So we're trying to rectify that. But I think I've pretty much talked entirely too much now. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.